Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Crime Time with Dutyron and Ed Wallace. You know the drill. We're retired New York City police detectives and 9/11 World Trade Center first responders. If you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, you're in the right spot. Hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, so you get all things Dutyron and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. Tonight, we have the case of Laken Riley. She was murdered in her prime, 22 years young, a nursing student, February of 2024, by an undocumented illegal from Venezuela. Again, we're hearing about this. This has Rachel Morin vibes. This has vibes of Jocelyn Nungari. We're hearing about this all too often, and I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of having to talk about these cases, but the trial, day one, started on Friday, yesterday, November 15th. And Ed and I are going to go over the forensics of day one. It was 7.5 or 8 hours of opening statements by the prosecution. The defense barely said much, but it was a lot of information, ladies and gentlemen. Ed, how you doing? I know you've been busy with a lot of home improvements for your nephew and so forth. I have good news to report. The bone marrow blood test came back negative, so no bone cancer for me, just here in the cheek. And we got a little bit of radiation, maybe 15 or 20 doses of radiation, and I should be good to go. I'm ready to fight. How you doing, brother?
Oh, I'm so tired. I'm so tired, guys. My nephew bought a house, and I've been helping him the last couple of weekends with my wife and my son do demolition and renovations. And today we ripped up a kitchen floor, 5 layers deep. And we found a newspaper when we tore the walls off the bathroom for remodeling the bathroom. We found a newspaper from 1943.
Wow. How about that? My house was built in 1941. I guess it is a born on date, 1941. So when you have houses that old, we found in the front of our home, when we cut out the windows to make the front windows larger, we found newspapers stuffed in there to use it as insulation in some of the walls. So it was interesting. Mm-hmm. This case, Ed, reeks forensics. This illegal immigrant that came over at the southern border in 2022 was arrested, released, arrested again here in New York City, released, and he got a hold of this young 22-year-old nursing student. Ed, this stuff is just, we're hearing about it all too often. And think about all the cases that don't get reported, that don't get national attention. This one happened to get national attention because the president of the United States mentioned her name at his last State of the Union. And it's been a political battle back and forth for the 3 families that I mentioned, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, and Jocelyn Nungari. She was only 12 years old and killed by 2 illegals as well from Venezuela, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm sick and tired of local law enforcement agencies because of politics not cooperating with our federal partners in ICE. I'm sorry. I'm done. This shouldn't be. It has to change. Okay. This guy was arrested twice, once by the NYPD, okay, for child endangerment. Okay. And they knew he was illegal. ICE did not, sanctuary city policies of these cities have their law enforcement cannot cooperate with ICE. And so an ICE detainer for the suspect, once the suspect enters the system, it's notified in NICES, and then federal law enforcement gets notified that this person has been arrested. They put in a detainer, and the detainers aren't honored by the local and state law enforcement of these sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. Okay, so then the guy gets out, all right, and he doesn't show for his court appearances. Now he's on the lam, and so there's a there's a bench warrant issued, and then he goes out and he was arrested another time as well. Everybody knows he's here illegally, and he's subject to deportation, but nobody's cooperating. So we're importing homicides.
It's troubling to say the least, because not just these victims that we're speaking about, and in this case, Laken Riley, 22 years young, had her whole life ahead of her. You got many, many more crimes that we're not hearing about that are getting committed against United States citizens, and it's just got to stop. Let's listen to some of the testimony from day one. This sergeant was heartbreaking. He was the campus university sergeant who first responded to the scene and found the body of Laken Riley. Just traumatizing to even hear it. And I understand that some of the family members left the courtroom when they showed some of the crime scene photos, and rightfully so. We're going to get into the forensics in a few minutes. So here's from day one.
This morning, chilling testimony from the officer who found the body of nursing student Laken Riley.
I found it. Ma'am. Oh, I need meds immediately. She's not breathing.
In the first day of the trial against Jose Ibarra, the court also shown the final moments of Riley as she headed out for a morning run she never returned from. Ibarra, an undocumented migrant from Venezuela, charged in her brutal killing in February along the University of Georgia running trail.
When Laken Riley refused to be his rape victim, he bashed her skull in with a rock repeatedly.
A chilling 911 call seeming to capture the struggle played in court as Riley's grieving mother sobbed.
Hello, this is Clark County 911. Can anyone hear me?
Prosecutors said Ibarra's DNA found underneath Riley's fingernails also proves that there was a struggle. And then there's the surveillance video showing an individual who prosecutors say is Ibarra tossing a black jacket in a dumpster just 15 minutes after they say Laken's heart stopped.
Jose Ibarra and Laken Riley's blood are on the jacket that he dumped in the dumpster.
The defense questioning the evidence and its validity early on.
The evidence that Jose Ibarra killed Laken Riley is circumstantial.
Ibarra pleading not guilty to murder.
I'd like to add to that, Ed, is a mountain of circumstantial and a mountain of forensic evidence. It's not just circumstantial.
Yes. How could he call forensic evidence DNA under the fingernails? How could he say that's circumstantial?
Yeah, just ridiculous. Sometimes I don't know. I know that, defense attorneys, you need to have them. It's part of our right under the Constitution is to, you're innocent until proven guilty. But this guy, and I'm going to put him back on the screen for a second. This guy showed no remorse. He showed no, what I did notice is when that 911 call was played, I saw his chest starting to rise and raise and drop quicker. He started a rapid breathing session because he knew that they were about to play the actual 911 call. And Ed, he took the victim's phone out of her hand and, unbeknownst to him, put his left thumbprint on the bottom part of that phone that was recovered in the woods.
15 points of identification ID'd back to him. Okay. It's not circumstantial, my friends. Okay. How does he explain having her phone? How does he explain that fingerprint on that phone? And that's why he was charged with interrupting a 911 call. Okay. Right. That's another charge that he's facing here.
And I'd like you to talk to the audience a little bit of an overview before I show the prosecution's opening statements. She showed quite a bit of DNA and forensic evidence. But as a crime scene investigator, you have a fresh crime scene here with, as it pertains to Laken Riley. They found her relatively quickly. You saw that the sergeant here testified that he started chest compressions and CPR on the victim. Just talk to the audience a little bit about a crime scene out in the middle of a running trail and all of the items that they recovered here.
Yeah, so I've had several cases like this, especially in Central Park and Prospect Park, as well as some of our other city parks. It's very similar. So in this case, she's off the path. She's beaten with a rock has her head crushed for all intents and purposes. And trigger alert, folks, if you can't handle this. And they accidentally flashed some of these photos at the trial, and then it was immediately brought to the judge's attention and stopped. But it was horrific. Okay, she fought though. She fought with her attacker for. Everything was recorded on her smartwatch. All of her vitals was recorded on her smartwatch. And in fact, even when her heart stopped, it was recorded. And the defense tried to have that all suppressed. But all that information is there. 15, 17 minutes long, she struggled and fought for her assailant to try to save her life. And under her fingernails, they got his skin. Okay. Then they have conventional DNA. They have STR, which is the male DNA, and then they were able to use true allele process to elicit more information. So, you got your hair and fiber transfers right now. You have his bloody fingerprint on the phone. You have soil transfer, you have footwear impressions that you're looking for at these scenes. Now, I'm not sure that they got into all of that here, but there was a horrific struggle here. So when you have such a horrific struggle, you're going to have a transfer of his fibers and hairs to her fingerprints on her items, and maybe even her skin. I don't know if they look for that. Not many crime scene investigators look for that. I mean, I teach people how to do it, and I show them, how to do it with different instruments to look for where fingerprints can be found on skin and how to attempt to lift it. But in this case, they got the gold standard DNA evidence out of here. You would be looking to take soil samples because the suspect's clothing, shoes, and things of that nature are going to remove soil from that area, and maybe even leaves and foliage and things of that nature. You saw the videotape of the suspect taking his clothing that had her, transfer of evidence on it, and he threw it into a dumpster that was caught. And he was also witnessed. An eyewitness saw him do it, and so forth.
So here's some of the things that you were talking about: the DNA, the traditional, the YSTR, and the Trulia. She went into this. This is 17 minutes, and I have it on 1.5 times speed. But I think it's important that we listen to a little bit of the opening here. So I'm going to go back to the beginning where she talks about some of the evidence. And I think it's important that everybody hears this. And Ed, you tell me when to stop it. I'll push forward if I have to.
Let's go to the video.
Yeah. Noticed it had long, dark hair on it, wrapped around one of the buttons, and he could see blood. And he thought that was suspicious. So he calls UGA PD. They respond at 9 o'clock on the day of Laken's murder. They collect the jacket found in the dumpster, and they send it immediately to the GBI Crime Lab indicator for testing. But while they're there, they look around and see that one of the residents in this apartment in B32 had what's called a Eufy camera, which is like a ring camera, but looks a little different, had a camera aimed at that dumpster. And so they asked the resident that night, hey, can we come in? Can we see your camera? He agreed to let them see it. And this is what they saw. At 9:44 in the morning, about 15 minutes after Laken Riley's heart stopped, this is what they see.
And that's another criminal charge, folks. That's disposing of evidence.
Correct. And then he goes over to this bush here. I know it's kind of hard to make out because this is the court playing it on a monitor inside the court. And again, this is where the mistake happened with the crime scene photo of Laken. It got leaked out on the live stream. There was a whole to do about it. At the end of the day, they talked about it. The defense asked the the judge to take the camera angle and to change it because they felt like they were zooming in on their client. And judge didn't rule on it, but the defense was asking for the camera to be back in the galley, looking at from the back and having the same shot. And she also was asking for the microphones to be turned off. But Ed, he disposed of a double set of, they described it as cleaning gloves or kitchen gloves, I believe, black latex gloves. And the victim's blood was on those gloves.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. You saw the list of what contained her blood there. You had it up there a little while ago.
Yeah. Ed, just talk a little bit about how important that is to get that kind of evidence. This camera footage is huge as it pertains
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, how does he refute this? How does he? How does anybody attack this and say, what, you're going to say it's not you? Well, that's obviously not true because, you're moving cell phone data and so forth. The tracking here, there's all kinds of photogrammetry that can be done here, give you the height and weight of that individual that was in the shot there, and it matches him. Yeah, that part could be circumstantial. Okay. But what is he doing with her stuff, dumping it in the dumpster and then behind the bush there with her blood on it? How does he account for that if it wasn't him?
Yeah. And I want to try to get it right to that part because, look, ladies and gentlemen, this is a slam dunk as far as I can see. Barring any major snafus, this is a judge trial. This is not a trial by a jury, and it's by the defendant's own choosing. This happened just last week, I believe. He chose to have a judge trial, not a jury trial. So the judge is going to hear all the evidence and make a decision. From my experience, that generally you have a better chance of convincing a jury or proving, the state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Defense really is going to have an uphill battle as it pertains to this, because this just gets even better as this goes along, because there's a treasure trove of DNA and forensic evidence that they have presented on day one. Right, Ed?
Yeah, usually you choose a bench trial if you're the defendant, if it's a very technical trial, all right? And you're going to be putting up a really technical defense. But I don't think he's doing that here. I think, I think he would have been wiser to go with a jury because the judge understands all of this evidence and knows its value.
Right. All right,
It was at the time, dump the jacket in the dumpster and go to those bushes there and dump something there. So they go to the bushes, and this video has been enhanced, and I'm sure you're going to hear a lot of testimony about this video, enhanced the best they could by GBI Cyber. And I know the court sat through some motions to suppress with this black Adidas hat. There was a lot of discussion about.
Yeah, the defense wanted to suppress the black Adidas hat because they recovered that hat off of his brother the next day at the house. Mm-hmm. So the brother was wearing that hat, but it's very common amongst families to share hats or hat. But he also knew that he used it at this crime scene, so he probably didn't want to have anything to do with it. Maybe threw it in his room, and the brother just picked it up, put it on his head. But the defense tried to say that the brother Diego was wearing that hat, and that's not his hat. Wanted it thrown out, but here he is.
That's why they were able to, separate some of the mixed DNA and identify that it wasn't one of his other two brothers, because there's three brothers. Now, YSDR is male DNA. So all male DNA comes from the father, just like mitochondrial comes from the mother.
Right.
But they were able to separate the brothers, at least one of the brothers, because of genetic defect and the fact that he had sickle cell.
There you go. So that's, again, another uphill battle for them, because we're going to hear more about this. This is just day one. I think that Monday is going to prove the prosecution is going to come swinging with this case as they present it. Hello to everybody in the chat. We will go to the questions towards the back end of this, but we got a lot to unpack here. So thank you all for super chats. Thank you for everyone for being here. Make sure you share. Make sure you give it a thumbs up, like the video, and engage in the chat. It always helps.
Now, a simple warrant to his apartment will find those clothes that you're seeing there in that video.
Right. We'll hear more about that in this video.
And you're going to hear more about all of those things. But this is an image that they locked in on and began to circulate around the neighborhood, or as the cops call a bolo. Be on the lookout for this individual. They didn't know who he was, and they circulated that. But they did go also that night, still the night of February 22nd, to the bushes, and they found 3 black disposable kitchen gloves. And those gloves were also sent immediately to the crime lab. And one of the interesting things about the black disposable gloves when they got to the crime lab and they were analyzed, this is a picture taken at the crime lab, is that on the thumb of the gloves, there was a hole. There's also other holes in the gloves, and they found them. But on the thumb area of one of the gloves that the crime lab examined, they found a hole. And they also found blood, and that blood was later to be determined to be Laken.
Anything on this, Ed, that is tricky, or that you might want to explain? The holes, the blood. I mean, this was
the holes appear to be an attempt by him to potentially get his fingerprints or DNA off the ends of the tips of the gloves. We sometimes take gloves like this and invert him inside out, and we have been successful in the past of getting both DNA and fingerprints of the wearer. So it looks like this was an attempt to destroy evidence there at the tips.
Or could it be that these gloves were damaged like this during a violent struggle? Because we do hear later on that our victim here, Laken Riley, put up quite a bit of a struggle with this guy. And
absolutely, these are very thin gloves. These aren't thick, millimeter gloves. So any type of fighting. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've worn gloves and had them torn on me when I was doing all kinds of automotive work or so forth.
And the interesting thing about this, and I have some of the timeline written down that the prosecution talks about, but if you look at this crime, which occurred on February 22nd of 2024, this year, 9:10 a.m., she stops dead in her tracks because of the Garmin GPS data on her Garmin watch that she coincidentally received as a Christmas present in 2023, Christmas of 2023. The attack starts at 9:10 when she stops dead in her tracks. And at 9:11, she initiates an SOS, the feature on her iPhone, to call 911. Her phone immediately dialed 911. 4 minutes later, he is then dragged at 9:14. That was 9:11 when she stopped dead in her tracks. 9:14, she's dragged 65 feet into the woods. And listen, again, there's a lot of things that we'll be talking about here in this next hour that are kind of tough to take if you suffer from PTSD. But many of her pieces of her hair were pulled straight out of her head. They talked about that the follicles and everything were there. The roots of her hair were out. So this was a brutal attack. This was violent, and she put up a struggle because she didn't want to become a victim of this guy in a sexual manner. He tried. Her shirt was pulled up to her up into her chin area. Her pants were pulled down a little bit, and her underpants were ripped. This is just, I mean,
I wonder if we're going to hear anything about any microscopic analysis of the fingertip edges, because he did use a big rock to attack her with, and maybe if they took a sample from the rock, the mineral content off the surface of the rock, or a microscopic slide of what the rock, and then maybe some of that transferred to the tips of these gloves when he was attacking her with that rock, and the friction between the rock and the gloves could cause that transfer and cause the tear.
Yeah. And then at 9:28 a.m. that morning, this is all according to the Garmin data on the watch that she was wearing, the smartwatch, her heart stops. So the attack occurred at 9:11. That's when 9:10 when she stopped dead in her tracks, and at 9:28 her heart stops beating as per the data on the Garmin GPS watch.
And Riley's blood on those gloves. So I've already told you about the geographic locations. They're all clustered. You can see in this map, the crime scene is at the top in the middle, called body crime scene. The dumpster where the items were found is marked Building S, is right by the bus stop, and then Laken Riley lives further up, Millage Avenue, towards the top of this photo. But the distance between The building S, which will become important, and Laken Riley's body is about 300 yards. The distance between the dumpster and Laken Riley's body is about 500 yards. And the distance between the dumpster and the bus stop and where the defendant lived, because he lived in that apartment complex, is about 150 yards. Everything is close together. So what happened next in the investigation is that the very next morning on Friday, February 23rd at 8:32 a.m. as ACCPD, again, is just looking out for anything. They had the bolo at that point. They encounter a person named Diego Ibarra. And Diego Ibarra is wearing a black Adidas hat that is of interest to them, which is they believe to be the identical hat that they had seen in the video the night before. And I will tell you this, on that hat that Diego Ibarra was wearing the next day is Laken Riley's blood.
And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, the defense tried to strike this. The defense job, Ed, we know this, is to defend their client. They knew that this would be damning evidence. And why they tried to strike it is they tried to say that they got it illegally, that they didn't get a warrant to get that hat, that they went into the house and they just rummaged through it. And they tried and tried and tried to get that thrown out. Thank God the judge declined it. He said motion denied. And that hat had Laken Riley's blood on it, as you heard the district attorney say. So,
okay, so that was from a blunt force trauma injury creating blood spatter.
Back. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So their theory that that was in fact the same hat was absolutely correct. So they encounter Diego Ibarra. He gives them a fake green card. They know it's fake because it has 2 different dates of birth on it. And so they ask him to go back to his residence. And
again, ladies and gentlemen, this entire family, it's not just the perpetrator, it's his 2 brothers, I believe another family member. They're all here. They all came together as a family unit from Venezuela illegally.
Yeah, I teach fraudulent documents among my other duties. And in fact, I'll be teaching one course just before Thanksgiving in Maryland. But it's, just shows you how bad a fake that he purchased, a green card with 2 different dates of birth for the same person.
Yeah. Hey, by a show of hands in the chat here. I mean, I like to engage with the chat. I love to engage with the chat. Put a 1 in the chat if by day 1, if you haven't watched it, then obviously don't participate in this. But if you feel that the prosecution has on day 1 presented damning evidence that would prove beyond a reasonable doubt on day 1 that this perpetrator murdered Laken Riley, put a 1 in the chat. If you feel that they haven't and you want to hear more, put a 2, because I'm curious. Like, I was blown away by 8 hours. I didn't listen to it live because I was at work, but when I got home last night and then a little bit this morning during my cup of coffee, and I started listening to this, I was like, this case is done. What more do you need? I mean, Ed, am I off base on that one?
Oh no. This evidence is just piling up. He is suffocating from the amount of evidence they have against him.
I haven't seen one number 2 in here, and it looks like a lot of people who are watching have seen this, because I said, if you haven't seen it, don't participate. And look, everybody's putting 1s in the chat. I don't think that there's anybody or any defense attorney that's on YouTube that could look at this and say, oh, they're railroading this guy. They're railroading him. There's no way.
Again, talking to him. UGAPD arrives and they begin to take over the scene. From the information that they had gotten from Diego Ibarra, they knew that hat was a hat seen in the video because of the proximity of the crime. And at some point, Diego began telling them he's got brothers in the house sleeping, and there were many communication difficulties at first because the first responding officers did not speak Spanish. No one in this apartment, D126, could speak English. So at some point, UGA brought 2 of their Spanish-speaking officers on scene, and the communication became a little easier. Officer Bridges, Officer Sand, both of whom are native speakers of Spanish, arrived and began taking over in the communications. When they get there, they are attempting.
Another thing I noticed, Ed, is this judge is listening very intense. He is locked in on the prosecutor as she speaks. This is day 1 opening statements. And then you see the face of the defendant here. You look at this defendant and you say to yourselves, this guy has, he's got a Spanish, it's all being interpreted in those headphones. Those headphones aren't on for any other reason than for him to get it in his language. He's hearing all of this and he is just nothing. There's nothing from this guy. He's toast on day one.
To secure the residence for a warrant. And before they could do a security sweep to secure the residence for a warrant, Argenis Ibarra, who's in the middle in this slide, comes out with a garbage bag in his hand. He eventually gives officers consent to enter the residence. And when Sergeant Epps enters the residence, he sees Jose Ibarra asleep in the bed. And that is how he's been identified in this case. You will see there are 5 residents that live in apartment D126. Jose Antonio Ibarra, this defendant, also goes by the name of Victor, which will be important because a lot of the communication within his phone and some of the witnesses just call him Victor. So Jose Ibarra is Victor. It is in fact the same person. Diego Ibarra is Jose's older brother, goes by the name of El Gocho, is a nickname that many people, including this defendant, call him El Gocho. Argenis goes by Manny, and Rosbelli Flores Bello goes by La Gorda, and then Juan
Ed, what do you go by? Eduardo?
Carlos Diaz Hernandez, they call Carlito. And I suspect the state will tell you right now, you're going to hear from Rosbelli and that residence. You will also hear that all the residents, Diego, Argenis, and Rosbelli, at least those 3, are currently in federal custody, some immigration issues, but we are going to produce Rosbelli to testify to the court about the things that she saw and observed that day. And it is Rosbelli who identifies Jose Ibarra from the dumpster video. The officers, when they saw Jose Ibarra that day, saw that he had many injuries to him, scratches on his arm, scratches on his wrist.
Now, this is key and critical because this is just the next day. So for those of you who are watching, this is not, they didn't capture him a month later. They didn't capture him 2 weeks later or a week later. He was collared on the 23rd. That was the incident happened Thursday morning. They got him the next day. So this is key because these photographs show that the defendant sustained injuries from his victim. Ed?
Yes. Yes, that's all fresh. I mean, that makes sense too about the nails. Underneath the nails is skin DNA. Okay.
They're pointing out. I'm going to take the closed caption off because it's going to block some of these. But you could see these are nail scratch marks. Is what it appears to me. It looks like there's almost 3 there, right? 2 defined, and then just a very light one there, and then 1 here on the back of his neck. So let's let this play.
Scratches on the back of his neck, scratches on his hands, and they photographed those injuries to him. And then they began to do an additional canvas of this entire apartment complex. There are multiple buildings in this apartment complex, A, B, C, D, and E. Multiple teams of agents began going around looking for cameras, talking to residents. What do they know? What do they not know? And one of the things that they found is that the Ibarras lived at D126. Right next to them is D125, and right next to D125 is D124. That dumpster had nothing in it for them. But in the next door neighbors, still camera shot at 10:24 a.m. 3 minutes later, Jose Ibarra is walking back towards his apartment, empty-handed, nothing in his hand.
Guys, while we're watching this, just make sure you hit the thumbs up on the video. Again, it helps to share it out there into the algorithm. Hit the thumbs up, share it out onto your social media platforms, and welcome. I appreciate everybody being here. Jen No, ATS News, Florida Pete, Kitty KU, Melissa, Leah. Appreciate you guys. Simi Sharp, always good to see you. Dawn Marie, Leanne, thank you for being here. Lou G, Katina, Noheem, thank you so much for being here. All right,
friends from Indonesia.
Yes, Indonesia checking in. We have a worldwide audience, Ed, and we love and respect all of the people that come in here. Many different opinions on many different cases, and we love that everybody can respectfully voice their opinion here on Crime Time with Dutyron and Ed.
So they searched the residence that day and they found a few things of significance. Number one, they found 3 more black disposable kitchen gloves, which were sent to trace evidence for plastics and polymer examination. And they concluded that they had originated from the same source as the gloves that were recovered.
Now that's really big, Ed. That they were actually able to identify those same gloves inside his apartment. I mean, I got to put you back on because I know you love this stuff. Sometimes people just like, oh, no big deal. How important is that?
No, it's huge. It shows he had access to those gloves in his apartment. Okay, so he's got the same gloves in his apartment.
Same exact gloves that he threw into those bushes that they recovered with Laken Riley's DNA and blood on.
Now, they do this by a series of microscopic analysis, and then they also can take a small sample and itemize it and do a GC mass spec on it and see if it comes down to the same materials used to produce the gloves. And everything seems to be matching here. So,
yeah, I mean, again, it's day one, and then they hit a grand slam, knocked it right out of the park.
Covered in the bushes. They recovered 2 of the defendant's Samsung cell phones, which you will hear some evidence out of. But they also found no bloody clothing, no bloody anything. And the shirt and the satchel that you see the defendant wearing in the video, the dumpster video, were never found. They're not in that arrest. So what other forensic evidence? The parties will stipulate to the prior Daubert hearing that this court has heard, so we will not be recalling the fingerprint evidence, but we will have a stipulation with the transcript and all of the exhibits that thumbprint, latent print that was on the phone was sent to ACCPD that night. And eventually, the digital image of that thumbprint on Laken Riley's phone was compared to Diego Ibarra, Argenis Ibarra, Rosvelli, and Juan Carlos, and they were all excluded. They didn't leave that thumbprint behind. And it was matched to this defendant, Jose Ibarra. It is Jose Ibarra's left thumb on Laken Riley's phone.
This is what the defense was actually fighting at, is that the camera was focusing in on their client as the prosecutor was laying out her case. And it was an argument that I don't think the judge is going to side with them on it. This is commonly done in many trials that we see.
What difference does it make? It's not a jury, it's a judge trial.
Yeah.
Okay. He's there live. Okay. He knows what his obligations are. So, I mean, I don't understand. How is it prejudicial? It was a silly argument to make.
I saved the video, and if we have time, I'll play it. 411 now. Good to see you, Will. Thank you for being here. Much respect to you and your channel. I appreciate you being here and being a channel member as well. Great to see everybody.
And the analyst or the expert who did.
Were you saying something, Ed?
Yeah, I was seeing. It's just like, the great work that was done here by law enforcement, gathering all these different types of forensic evidence and circumstantial evidence and the clothing and the video and the digital, all this stuff. It's like a dump truck full of evidence, and they backed up to this guy Ibarra and they just dumped it on him. Okay, he's toast.
He's definitely toast, but I want to go over some of this stuff because some of this DNA stuff, people have questions about it.
There's also DNA in this case, and you're going to hear about 3 different types of DNA: traditional, YSTR, and true allele. All true allele is probabilistic genotyping, but it is a computer software program that deconvolutes or separates complex mixtures of DNA. That's what true allele does. But before you can go to...
Did she do an okay job of describing that, Ed? Because I see
she's pretty spot on. It's a software used on the genetic mixtures and in efforts to try to separate them. So she nailed it.
Yeah, she did, because I watched that video that you shared with me. And again, if we have time, I'll play that because it actually breaks down how they use this program to break it down and separate it.
True allele. You have to start with traditional DNA. So all of the items of evidence that you're going to hear DNA results from started with the traditional DNA. They were swabbed, they were amplified, they were quantified, all the things that you do with regular DNA. But we do have some regular DNA results in this case. First and foremost, the jacket. The jacket found in the dumpster had blood on it. And in the blood for traditional DNA is Laken Riley's DNA and this defendant's DNA. And only the two of them. Jose Ibarra and Laken Riley's blood are on the jacket he dumped in the dumpster. The rocks and the trees from the crime scene, they were also processed for DNA, for latent prints, and for everything we got. But on the rocks in the tree, just Laken's DNA, Laken's blood on the rocks in the tree.
Ed, why is there blood on the tree? Why would there be blood on the tree from the?
Well, it could be from what we call radial impact spatter. From once you create a bleeding wound, like say after the first impact with that stone, she starts to bleed in her cranial area, and then any subsequent impacts in that same area will cause impact with the blood, and the blood will then call what we call radial spatter out in 360 degrees from the impact site. And then also once the rock gets filled with blood, when you're going back and forth with the rock to strike multiple strikes, you're then casting off blood from the rock.
Must have been a brutal crime scene. I'll say that because from the testimony that we heard and the 911 call and the reactions of the sergeant.
Her multiple skull fractures.
Our good friend Eileen, I know you'll appreciate this, Ed.
All right.
There you go.
Eileen got it right. It's spatter and not splatter.
We have merch that says that.
Attempted at first, which is protocol, to do what's called YSTR DNA testing on Laken's fingernails. So both her left and her right hands were swabbed by the medical examiner in this case, and they were both sent to DNA for analysis. YSTR is a better fit for trying to separate male and females because only males have Y chromosomes. And so they attempted YSTR first and they were successful. The problem with YSTR, and the officers did gather the DNA of Jose Ibarra, Diego Ibarra, and Argenis Ibarra. They are brothers, and blood brothers share the same paternal line, and they share the same YSTR profile, unless there's a genetic mutation. And what the lab found when they tested the fingernails of Laken Riley is that, first of all, the left hand, there's nothing. No DNA of any other person other than Laken. But on her right hand, there was male DNA. And for the YSTR testing that they tried first, Jose Ibarra could not be excluded as the donor of that YSTR profile, and neither could Argenis, because, again, they're blood brothers. They share the same YSTR profile. But Diego could be excluded. And that's because Diego carried a genetic mutation that the lab was able to see, and he was able to be excluded as the donor of YSTR profile underneath Laken's nails. But after the YSTR was done, it was then sent to True Allele, along with a lot of other items. And when True Allele tested, and the data was sent into the True Allele program. It didn't test it, but when the data was sent into the True Allele program, True Allele excluded Argenis as the donor. True Allele excluded Diego, who had already been excluded by STR anyway, but True Allele matched Jose Ibarra to the DNA underneath Laken's right fingernails. So this likelihood ratio, which I have before the court here, 10 billion times more probable than a coincidental match. I'll tell you the glove.
Did she say 10 billion?
Yes, she did.
My goodness.
Gloves that were tested, that's all just Laken's blood. The black gloves that were in the bushes. There's a straw that was tested. That is the defendant's blood. I'm going to talk to you about that a little later. And then the hat, the black Adidas hat, is also Laken's blood. And then the jacket also did contact swabs. So in addition to the blood on the jacket, it did contact swabs that were sent to True Allele. And again, it's the defendant and Laken on the jacket. But importantly on this dark blue jacket, also Laken's hairs that were wrapped around the button were sent to trace evidence. They are consistent with Laken Riley's hair. And of course, it's consistent with her long dark hair and all the microscopic analysis on it. Her DNA.
And people would ask if they watch this or watch the replay, why is that jacket amongst garbage?
Because he threw it there. And that's on videotape on the dumpster.
And they've photographed and videotaped it as they recovered
in
it.
situ, as we say, in situ, as they found it at the bottom of the dumpster.
Thank you. I just wanted to put that out there. I knew the answer. I obviously knew the answer, but people who watch the replay or people who are watching live might say to themselves, why are they showing a photo of the jacket in a in garbage? This is as they found it, pristine, as it was recovered by the crime scene unit or officers on the scene.
DNA is on that jacket.
Say again?
I said, thank God nothing was dumped on top of it.
Correct. The only thing that, I don't think this, obviously, I don't think this is going to matter, is that her friends who were tracking her movements and always tracked each other's movements, they initially went out to look for her. And I know they didn't do this obviously on purpose, but they found one of her earbuds in the woods.
Yes.
And they photographed it, but then picked it up and took it back home. So that to me was the only thing that I heard, and Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, that jumped out that could be, I mean, again, it's not going to have an effect on this case because it's one earbud, and they didn't, obviously do that purposely, but they took a photo of it as they saw it laying in the woods, and then they picked it up and took it back home.
So for future reference, folks, if you're out there looking for a friend and you find evidence that may belong to her, don't pick it up. You photograph it, that's fine. The photograph in your phone becomes evidence. They can seize your phone, but you might not want to do that either. But call 911 and stay there. But the photograph, if they didn't turn off their metadata, has the GPS location for where the photograph was taken, so we know where the bud was from the information from the photograph.
Yeah, from the metadata on the photograph.
Right. So they shouldn't have picked it up, though. Should have just stayed there and called 911.
Again, these are 22-year-old young college students, and like I said that they didn't do that purposely. They just did it because they freaked out. Again, if you're watching this, or anybody that you talk to people, any evidence of any sort, whether it's your family, friends, loved ones, or stranger, you leave it there. You secure it. You call 911. You stay with it if possible, and if it's safe, and you just leave it as it is. So it's important. I just want to
remember that goes back to what I say: RAIN, recognize, avoid, isolate, and notify. Recognize, avoid, isolate, and notify.
Bingo. Thank you, Ed.
Okay, so there's really no need to do DNA on the hair because her DNA is already on the jacket in the form of blood, but they look microscopically at her hair and it's consistent with her hair. But the important thing they found about several of the hairs, I believe over 15 of them, is that they were forcibly removed from her head.
So, Ed, I want to put us back on because I got a whole bunch more to talk about. But I want to go to the chat because we're 48 minutes into it. Hashtag Ed, hashtag Dutyron with any questions as it pertains to this. Let me go over some of the super chats, or maybe you can, Ed. Can you go into the start parts and maybe highlight them while I look for the next thing that I want to grab? Can you do that on your end?
Okay.
Just go to the starred parts.
The starred parts.
Where it says starred message. Can you see that?
Hold on. I'm looking. Yes, I do see starred, and I'll start clicking on them.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Leanne Wilson, 2 pounds super sticker. Thank you very much for doing that. We got Charisma, member for 34 months. Thank you for that. Congratulations. All right. Jeff. Our good friend Jeff became a YouTube member. All right. Okay, Sue, member for 27 months. Thank you for the prayers. Thank you for being a member for 27 months. Yes, I'm trying to preach it. I'm trying to preach it, Jeff. And I do know our friend you mentioned earlier. Let's see. Sue, thank you for the $10 super sticker. Thank you very much. You don't have to do that, but thank you. Jeff, thank $1.99. We have the badger holes to fill fire ants and bears. Okay. All right. CK, thank you for the $5 Canadian. Hope all is well with you in the Great White North too. Thank you. All right. Okay. Semi Sharp became a YouTube member. Thank you, Simi. Let's see. Katina. gifted 5 Dutyron memberships, folks. Thank you, Katina, and you lucky folks. Well, congratulations. And finally, Rosemary J. Thank you, Ron and Ed, a member for 13 months. Hey, thanks for being with us for 13 months. And we're all caught up now. Let me go back to the live chat and see if I can't pull up some questions. Okay, so you're saying rain, recognize, avoid, isolate, and notify is hard to remember. Okay.
I think it like this. We need rain here in the Northeast. So if you think about rain falling down, you look at that acronym, and it makes it kind of easy when you study it. I mean, it's part of something that you would study if you were becoming a crime scene investigator, or if you are a crime scene investigator. Ed, I don't know if you saw anything that jumped out in the chat, but I wanted to play this because this is the defense. I wanted to be fair about this because we played the prosecution's opening. Let's listen to what the defense had to say, and it wasn't much.
22-year-old nursing student on the campus of UGA earlier this year started yesterday. 11 Alive's Erica Murphy is live from the Athens Clarke County Courthouse, where that trial is set to resume on Monday. Good morning, Erica.
Good morning, Ariana. So Jose Ibarra stands accused of taking the life of Laken Riley back in February. On Friday, a trial for Ibarra started here at the Athens Clarke County Superior Court. Now, prosecutors say that Ibarra set out on February 22nd to find a victim, and that victim was Laken Riley. Defense attorneys had tried to have some DNA evidence excluded in the case and a peeping Tom charge against him dismissed, but those attempts were unsuccessful. Day one of the bench trial in Judge H. Patrick Haggard's courtroom was filled with fiery arguments from both sides, each trying to make their case.
Jose Ibarra put on a black hat, a hoodie-style jacket, and some black kitchen-style disposable gloves. And he went hunting for females on the University of Georgia's campus. And when Laken Riley refused to be his rape victim, he bashed her skull in with a rock repeatedly. That is what this case is all about.
Now, defense lawyers for Ibarra argue that the evidence against him is circumstantial, and they plan to prove that during this trial. Proceedings in this case start up again on Monday. Reporting from Athens.
So I thought that the defense talked there, but I guess they didn't. But that was about all they said, is that this is based all on circumstantial evidence. And that's a bunch of hogwash, as we say in the business. A couple of more super chats came in, and I want to highlight this one because Kimberly Culp says that she broke her back. She lost her husband last year, and now she broke her back. Kimberly, I'm sending you strength and prayers, but like I'm just a phone call away, or reach out on Dutyron.com. So she says, so only on a little bit. Prayers for you both. No. Prayers for you, Kimberly.
Prayers for you. Yes, stay strong. Let's get you through rehab and back on your feet.
Yeah, my goodness. Broken back. That's not easy to recover from. So thank you for the super chat.
Hold on. I got a question here. Okay. Here we go. Ed, what damage would fingerprint powder do to DNA from potential defendant's thumbprint on victim's phone? The conventional fingerprint powders, including crazy glue, does not prohibit us from obtaining genetic profiles for DNA after it has been processed for fingerprints. There is one known fingerprint powder, a magnetic fingerprint powder that has been shown to cause issues with obtaining DNA after an item has been processed with it. And a lot of that has to do with the metal filings that are inside the magnetic powder. But as based on all the studies that I've read and everything that I've seen, it's only one particular magnetic powder, because there are many different types of magnetic fingerprint powder that causes a problem. As I said again, even crazy glue fumes do not prohibit us from getting the genetic markers for a DNA profile after processing for fingerprints.
Amazing. Thank you for answering that, and thank you for asking that question. Rosemary J, thanks for the 2. Dutyron and Ed, thank you for Annalise, for the analyzing, I think she's trying to say. Um, Sergeant, the sergeant from the campus police, he gave some testimony, and I want to play a little bit of this because I promised everybody I would play it. So let's just play this. This is a sergeant. He was visibly shaken when I watched the replay. I saw him very upset, but I think he was more upset with the family's response to what he was saying. Remember, he did CPR on our victim here. He did CPR on Laken Riley, came across her body in the middle of the woods on that running trail, off the trail, actually, 65 feet. Was it 65 feet or 65 yards? I got to make sure I got that right. I believe it was 65. Oh, man. Somebody correct me in the chat. I think I had it right, but it was way off her running path. He dragged her into the wooded area there. Let's listen to what he had to say.
And we are going to start to play it from there. But tell us now where you are in the intramural fields or that area.
Yeah, so it looks like it's going to be back further on one of the larger trails that circles from the back on the picture from earlier.
Okay, it was 65 feet. I've got it, my notes right here. I see it.
It would have been the main trail that circled from the Redcoat Practice Band directly back from Lake Eric Drive.
Can you see that trail in State's Exhibit 5?
I believe so. Let's see.
Can you show the court on State's Exhibit 5 where you are now?
Yes, so it should be right around here near the bend of this trail.
All right.
So again, he's showing the judge. He doesn't have to show a jury, so he's just facing that towards the judge, because the judge is the one who's going to make the decision here.
Yeah, normally when something like that is done with a demonstrative aid of a photograph, it says, usually it says, let the record reflect that the witness is pointing to blah, 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 blah in the photograph and so forth. But none of that was done here.
Right. Yep. This is his body cam footage of him going through the leaves. You could see the look on his face too, Ed. He knows what's coming here, and he's not easy with this. But they're going to pan over to the defendant, and he shows no emotion other than he starts breathing a little heavy, because he knows also that what this officer is going to come across.
Is that you looking at your phone again?
Yes. If y'all can stop calling for now.
Who were you talking to at 12:29?
I was speaking to my dispatch. When I first stepped into the wood line, I asked them to begin calling her cell phone so I could hear some kind of an audio alert to where her phone may be. I didn't hear anything, so I told them to go ahead and turn it off to try to preserve battery.
I want to stop right here at 12:29. Can you see the running trail from where you're at?
Yes.
Go back so we can get oriented. Show us where it is.
I'm currently in A5 is where the phone last pinged. Things like that kind of interweave. Switch more. This. Ma'am. Okay.
All right, so I just want to let you know right here is at the point where he comes across Laken Riley's body, and he lets a gasp out, and he starts calling her ma'am, ma'am, ma'am. So again, if you're sensitive to this stuff, step out, and then we're gonna come back, close up, and we'll give you guys our take on the rest of this. But this is kind of tough. This is tough to listen to because he goes into doing CPR and compressions and counting. But again, we got to play it.
To the university, I found it. Ma'am, ma'am, ma'am. Oh, I need EMS immediately to the location where the phone pings. Ma'am, ma'am. She's down, she's not breathing. Potentially been attacked. Starting CPR now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. One, two, three,
No
4,
emotion.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. I'm not getting any bolts. She's stiff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. That's what you exact. 1, 2, go back through. What's that? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Take over.
So you guys get what first responders, what they do, life-saving measures. You could hear the sirens in the background. You heard someone come up and he said, take over. This sergeant is just one of many heroes that are out there doing God's work. But on this faithful day, didn't matter what he did here. There was no bringing her back. But my point of showing this too is to show you how heartless and how emotionless this defendant is. He's sitting there listening to a first responder coming upon the horror that he's created, and he's not even flinching. He's showing one bit of emotion. I hope that this trial is swift. I hope the prosecution delivers the 1-2 knockout punch as they did on day one. I don't anticipate this thing going more than a week, Ed. What's your thoughts on that?
No, nor do I. I don't know what the defense could possibly be to all of this.
Yeah. There's really not much to talk about here other than that we have a problem in the United States. And right now that problem is still happening. It's the southern border. It's wide open and people are pouring into this country unvetted. And when they get caught, they're not getting prosecuted. They're not getting picked up. They're not getting brought back to their country. This perpetrator is from Venezuela. And I made it a point to highlight 3 cases, and I have them written down in bold. Laken Riley, 22 years old, February 22nd of 2024, her life was snuffed out. Jocelyn Nungari, 12 years old, got out of her house in the middle of the night in Houston, Texas. 2 undocumented Venezuelan men, Johan Jose Martinez, 22, Franklin Jose Pena Ramos, 26, murdered and beat her to death. Rachel Morin, a mother of 5, August 6th of 2023, mother of 5, 37 years old, out running on a trail in the Maupaw Trail in Hartford County, Maryland, murdered and raped by Victor Martinez, an El Salvador illegal. That's 3.
Who also raped a teenager in Los Angeles, who
Yeah.
also committed murder in his home country and was stopped at our border and released.
It's maddening. And I tell you, again, the photos of these victims, it's heartbreaking to see this, and you can look at these pictures and you could see them and they're there in your face. I have them saved. Here's the perpetrator. Here's the young victim in Houston, Jocelyn. We go to Rachel Morin, mother of 5. These pictures are all too familiar. And the dozens and dozens, and probably, I don't even know what the numbers are. I'm afraid to even look at them. But the numbers of unreported, the ones that don't make the news, the ones that are out there and just don't get any attention. So that's why it's important that we press our, or the powers that be, to secure up the border, to keep us safe. This is about Americans. These are about us. This is about us. This is happening on our homeland. This
Primary responsibility of every level of government, local, state, and federal, is the protection of its residents and citizens. That is the primary duty of our government, and they're failing us.
We've been failed over and over again. Look, there was just a case out here on Long Island with an undocumented immigrant who raped a 4-year-old girl out here on Long Island. It was on our news. I was shocked that all the news, they played one little blurb of it, and that was it. Never heard of it again. So these things are happening all over. This is not just a problem at the southern border. This is happening in Texas. This is happening in Maryland. This is happening in California. It's happening in Georgia. It's happening in every state. So we need to do more about this. We need to talk about it and make our elected officials do their jobs that they're supposed to be doing.
No more stopping local and state law enforcement from cooperating with ICE. No more.
It's got to end. It's got to end now. All right. On behalf of Crime Time with Dutyron and Ed Wallace, we want to wish you guys a great rest of your weekend. Again, I had the great news of finding out that the cancer, my lymphoma, the follicular lymphoma, is just in my cheek as it stands right now. I'm looking at 15 or 20 radiation sessions. God is good. And I thank you all for the prayers. I thank you all for the cards, the gifts. Like someone send us Sonoma cheese and stuff, packages coming. So guys, thank you so much for sending stuff to the P.O. box. It's completely unnecessary, but I love that you guys care enough to send cards and stuff. You guys are the best. Ed, you've been right by my side all along, and I appreciate you and all your support as it pertains to this cancer that I'm going through. But I'm going to fight it. I'm tired, so I'm not going to, we're not live like we usually are, but we're going to do what we can when we can. And once I start this treatment, I know I'm not going to be, my mouth's going to get a little sore and so forth. So who knows? Maybe Ed will have to take over the Dutyron show by himself and doing them solo.
Uh-oh. Just when you thought it was safe to be on Dutyron.
On behalf of Ed Wallace and Dutyron, I know Ed's got one more thing to say, but I want to say it first. Strength, prayers, and positive vibes to Laken Riley's family, her loved ones, friends, the law enforcement that had to see this horrific and heinous crime, the EMS, the paramedics. You heard the sirens in the background, the 911 dispatchers, everybody, the prosecution. By the way, Sheila Ross and team on the state side, on the prosecution, are doing a hell of a job. And Judge Haggard, I've sent him also strength and prayers to give a righteous and just verdict, and to have this guy rot in a cell. I mean, if it was up to me, I would deport him back to his country and let them take care of him. But that's not how it goes. Justice is going to be served here, and hopefully he's locked up for the rest of his sad, sorry life. Ed, you got something to say?
Remember, folks, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us and being part of our true crime family. I know you can get your true crime fix anywhere you like on the internet, but thanks for spending your time with us. I want to wish you upcoming happy holidays, and I want you to always be safe, be prepared, and watch your six.
Amen to that. Good night from New York City, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for giving it the thumbs up and sharing it. We'll see you soon. Lou G, I see you in there. Princess Mitch, DCP, Pacific Northwest, Sean B. All of our friends are here, and it's hard for us to acknowledge everybody. Karen, our legal-minded friends, good to see you. Brenda is saying, Ron, what an answer to the prayers that cancer is isolated to your cheek. Praise God. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, thank you for everybody for the prayers. Stand by for a message from the illustrious cop team. That's Kara, Oscar, and Popeye. We'll see you all soon.